Okay. On that note, let's open it up for comment, question, discussion from anybody on the floor. Yes.
Hi. Thank you very much for really an interesting discussion. I would like to probably take it a bit of in complementary path. You talked a lot, all of you, about, I guess, the leadership and responsibility, and but the path, the other side of the coin, I guess, as a leader, really a consequence of society, how we can produce leader to the extent where we're seeing around the world now, what's happening there? Are we empowering society, community in a knowledge base to really sort of stop seeing leadership that we don't like, for example? What can we do to empower society, community, so these kind of, well, not all of them, but certain leaders are not void?
Okay. If you go to Alistair McIntyre talks about virtue ethics, and he talks about the community of the university as embodying this kind of dialogue that we're talking about, and therefore he talks about that's the place. He overstates it, but never mind. It's a nice thought that the university is a community which enables this kind of communication, enables this kind of dialogue, enables this kind of sharing, and therefore enables those key elements of responsibility to be learned over 3 years while undergrad and beyond. Forget about kind of a course on responsibility.
Unfortunately, the majority of students no longer go to an arts school, but go to business school. Where they learn an entirely different set of values and modes of discourse. And I think that is part of the change, that you're pointing toward.
Can I give you a slightly different answer? You said, "How can we empower SOS?" And I thought your next, the end of that was going to be, "Why are we empowering sociopaths?" Which is,
Wow, you can say that.
no, but and that is a serious point. I mean, that is my question. Why are we empowering sociopaths as our leaders? Okay, and so wait. So my point would be, you say, how can we empower society? But we are empowered. My question is, why are we refusing to take our power? Why are we refusing to use our power? And why? And the result of some of the ways in which, as a collective, we are abdicating our responsibilities to ourselves and to the others who form the us, right? The broad us, exactly opens the door to what Gary was talking about before. So why are we empowering sociopaths, and what prevents us from taking our own power back? That would be my question in response to your question.
Back to that.
Yes, and then.
I'm curious to know what language you might use in distinguishing between political leadership and religious leadership in our current sort of environment.
Sorry, can you? I only heard none. I didn't hear the end. Could you repeat that?
She asked, what difference in language would we use in describing religious or political power or leadership? And I said none. I would use the same word.
In terms of the two areas.
Yes.
I wasn't going to use the word power. It's like trying to understand, like hasn't there been so much dialogue about religion should keep with the spiritual and politics, ignore, they should delve into politics. So, in our current time, I'm curious to know, okay, what is the healthy way to educate both religious leaders and political leaders about the various roles they each have to play in creating a healthy community?
Okay, so
there are several points. I want to just get back to your point about business schools. I'm incredibly offended. I'm never a business school.
I know you are.
But
Contradictions.
well, yes, be hopeful. Business schools, there are many which are now part of what's called the Principles for Responsible Management Engagement. There are many which are reflecting upon this. There are many that are reflecting on the development of responsibility. And the core of what they're talking about is, if you are a leader, you could define leadership in terms of responsibility, taking responsibility for your ideas, for your feelings, etc. And being accountable, being open. So, are you actually dialogic? Are you doing listen? Yeah. And being somebody who shares leadership. That's to say, everybody feels they are part of that. Now, I think that's the answer. Because I think the crises which have faced us in political and religious leadership have all been because we have had, and I'm being very naughty here, irresponsible leaders and irresponsible leadership. They've been unable to practice this kind of approach. And the result is they've ended up with, you can get that in Parliament, or you get that in a church.
She was asking a different question. He was asking a question about how these two, now that we easily separate in our minds, the religious and the secular, the business and the religious, how leaders within that could be trained to view each other as having legitimate, valuable domains of operation. And fortunately, that division is being increasingly blurred, written over, and ignored because there is no clean division between them. And that's coming up in training. Businesses are taking over all kinds of religious language. They have mission statements, for example, etc. And religious types, well, they got profit loss sheets. But so that there is actually a much more wholesome and holistic view of leadership, which you were describing, emerging out of all of that, which I think does answer the question that I heard you ask.
Okay. Next, and then Hussein. Yes.
Two questions I've been fascinated.
One will be allowed.
One.
Oh, Gary.
Very quickly, go on.
We haven't discussed what I see as the rapid increasing pace of disruption going on, particularly in the world, and to what extent that might be having increasing this anxiety factor that you discussed. And secondly, with the increasing diversity of our communities in the Western world particularly, and with the rise of identity politics where every tribal group is now on a different footing to how the old hierarchy used to work, has that done? Do we need to rethink our model of representative democracy in order to give proper voice to those different folks?
Just very quickly on that before Simon and Gary have a go. I think the question of disruption, I agree with you entirely, but I think my answer would almost be the same as Gary and Simon's answer about anxiety, which is that every age and historical period experiences disruption.
But not the pace that we now see.
Yeah, well, even there, I'm not convinced about. It's hard to know unless you have the long generational view about whether the experience of that disruption was just as intense and just as rapid for people in other periods. But let's leave that aside. So I just wanted to make that point. But over to the two of you on the rest of the question.
You took the nice bit.
Identity politics and diversity, yeah? About which I have more to say, but I'm deferring to
These are challenges to be managed and in very creative ways. You can't wish to have a single identity society, although I think Hungary is thinking of it, and France is getting dangerously close. Those attempts in the past have failed miserably. There are other models around, and Jacinda Ardern again stands out as a wonderful leader of somebody who can provide a vision of oneness out of that includes the diversity, not out of the diversity, but in which the diversity threads in and forms part of it. It doesn't go away.
Gary, do you think that part of Ardern's but it's not just her. I mean, it is her, but it's not just her. It's New Zealand more broadly. Do you think part of their ability to reassert those values has to do with the fact that they've already they have a treaty with Maori people?
Yes.
I mean, in other words, that there's less unfinished business, not perfect in New Zealand, but there's less unfinished business in that structural, historical, narrative sense, whereas there's a mass of unfinished business in Australia on the same issues. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, they did learn to respect the Maori in the mid-19th century. And so they do have a treaty, and it's been huge. I watched at a particular moment in the New Zealand Anglican Church when they were moving to enable Maori to have their own parallel structure. And people go, oh, apartheid! Well, yes, I could understand what they're saying, but it was actually a matter of enabling, encouraging, giving agency to, and it's been working back and forth perfectly well. So clergy in the church are required to learn Maori, and people actually do use that language,
in everyday ways.
Yes, but it's also fortunate that they had one. So they had one language to deal with and a kind of singular culture as opposed to the complexity we have here, but hey, that just makes the challenge richer.
Okay. Anything on identity politics or tribalism from either of you?
I particularly want to go back to your point about should we revisit democracy, social democracy. Now, I'm from England, if you didn't really know, and we are very keen on the idea of visiting and revisiting social democracy. Yeah. Partly because a lot of people say, we know what democracy is, and it's about the vote, you know. But the truth is, at the moment, and you are right, and here I'm I get myself, which is very worrying, but nonetheless, here we are seeing the emergence of cracks within our within our nations. Jonathan Haidt, The Righteous Mind, 2013, cracking little book in which he talks about the notion that we make up our minds ethically in an instant, and then we spend the rest of our time rationalising what we've decided. Yeah, and of course this builds up basically tribalism. Democrats, Republicans, they each have their own position, and the important point is they can't see the other position. There is no way. We see that in America. They cannot see it. Gilbert and Sullivan knew this already a long time ago. Every babe that is born into this world alive is either a little liberal or a little conservative. But if we're in that position, we do have a situation where politically we're afraid of challenging. Politically we're afraid of asking a question. Is that what you mean? Do you really mean that? And therefore holding people to account. And I don't think modern democracy effectively holds leaders to account. Similarly, I don't think modern business effectively holds leaders to account. There is no annual meeting that is not thoroughly rehearsed so that nobody can get a word in edgeways. They use technical language. There is no coherence there other than the experts. So I agree, we need to re-examine social democracy, and in particular the notion of mutual accountability. What that is about. It's not just about voting, it's about how we achieve dialogue with politicians.
Hussein, I think we might make yours the last question unless somebody is burning. I'm just conscious of the time.
Yeah, I was just thinking throughout, looking at it from another perspective. Let's say if a religious leader encourages to spread fear and anxiety, we would call them irresponsible leadership, isn't it? But isn't it one aspect of their responsibility is to spread anxiety and fear? But that what I mean, let's say they told you if you don't do that, you are going to burn in hell. If you don't do that, it's going, God will make you blind. If you don't do that, isn't it actually essentially one of the core duties or responsibility to spread anxiety and fear?
Oh, you're saying it's their responsibility?
Yes, I want to say that's one aspect of their responsibility.
He hands it to me. I was raised in a tradition which would have answered yes.
Yes.
And I have come away from that tradition, and I would say at this point that would be irresponsible. Because I think it's a misrepresentation of the one that is beyond all of us, to whom I owe my ultimate allegiance.
Yeah.
And
A total misrepresentation, but then we're just getting into a theological argument if we went beyond that. And those are never apples.
But there is, no, that's true, but I think you could say the same thing about politics, Hussein. In other words, if you see, the only way that you can see it as a responsibility of a religious leader to intentionally foment fear and anxiety for a religious end has to go back to your understanding of the god or gods in whose name that fear and anxiety is being promoted. So it has to do very centrally. Similarly, you could say the same about politics and politicians. The only way in which you can argue that it is responsible, I think, for a politician, the only way a politician can see herself or himself as engaging in responsible behavior by generating and sustaining fear and anxiety is because of the underlying conceptualization they have of the society and the politics of the society that they are trying to construct or to preserve. So it all depends on who, what is the construct that's sitting behind that.
That's absolutely right. And Haig's position is exactly this, because though Democrats and Republicans may both believe in freedom, it's a different kind of freedom, which is based on a particular view of the world. And the one thing they don't examine is that view of the world. Everything reinforces it. One final point, which is an illustration in conflict resolution of how leaders were made to come together and become responsible for their words. George Mitchell, the great senator, we had the great benefit of having him as a visiting professor in our peace studies, and he said to the leaders in Northern Ireland, he said, all I'm here to do is to make sure that I keep you coming together every single Friday and we hear each other's words until we begin to make some sense of those words and can give an account that we're happy with and all of us are happy with. Okay? So he was saying, my purpose, my job is simply to bring you together and develop accountability. And he has this wonderful punchline. He said, and we had 999 bad Fridays, and then we had a good Friday.
Let me end by saying I will see your George Mitchell and raise you one with George Steiner, with the wonderful George Steiner, who said history is a language net cast backward. Yes. Okay. On that note, could you please thank our two panelists?